Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today we're going to be taking a closer look and showing you how to install the Timken Replacement 15123 trailer hub bearing. When it comes to our hub setup, there are a few main components here. I've got 3 of them in my hand right now, and the first one is our outer bearing. That's what's going to ride right here on the outside, and it's going to be the first thing that we're going to pop out of here really once we go to take off our wheel and then pop out our hub assembly. As we go further along on our spindle, we're going to get to the inner bearing, which in our case is larger just because we're at a higher axle capacity. Now, if you're in that 2,000 pound range, even up sometimes into the 3,500 pound range, you could find that the outer and inner bearings are the same size, but in our case, we don't have a straight spindle. It is a tapered one, so we do have the larger and smaller bearings to go along with that. And how we cap everything off at the end of our hub is going to be a grease seal, just like our Timken one right here, and that is going to get pressed in and prevent any grease from backing out of our hub and then getting all over our brake assembly. And the other main component here is going to be our grease. Now, for our specific application, we are using high temp grease, and this is what's going to make sure that everything stays lubricated and can properly spin, because if your bearings start to seize up and then they can no longer spin, they're going to overheat and then they're going to explode. You're going to have metal shavings all on the inside of here, and it's going to potentially end up damaging your spindle to the point where it's not salvageable anymore and you're going to have to replace your axle. Now, the other half of our bearing setup is the race, and the race is what gets pressed into the bore hole of our hub, and then that matches up with the cone shape of our bearing and allows it to spin, so that way we have contact on our hub, contact on our spindle, but we still have that movement so that way our wheels can roll. If your part number has worn off, then you're going to have to start looking at your spindle. Now, when we're taking a look at it, there's going to be different sections that we're going to be needing to measure for them for our specific bearing or our grease seal. So starting here at the top, you can see this ledge right here. So this is called a journal at any one of these sections where we have our stuff sitting. And for our grease seal, that's going to sit right up on here. You can see we have our inlet where our grease is going to be pumped in here through that grease zerk fitting, and that's going to kind of help press that out with the grease seal holding it all in place so that we don't get grease all over our brake assembly. Just past that is where our inner bearing is going to sit. It's going to ride right on this journal right here, and then all the way here next to our threads at the end of our spindle is where our outer bearing is going to sit. Now, when we have this all nice and cleaned up, we want to make sure that we're also double checking, making sure there's no grooves or any kind of scratches on here where our bearings or our grease seal sit. If there are, we want to make sure that we're kind of feeling it with our fingernail. If your fingernail gets caught on any of those little grooves or scratches, then it is past the point of saving, and it's now time to replace the spindle or the axle itself. So to measure this, we're going to want to make sure that we have a caliper. I'm using a mechanical one. I would highly recommend switching over to a digital one. They're pretty cheap. You can easily pick one up here or at a local auto parts store. And what that's going to do is give us our precise measurement, because we need to be up to the 3rd decimal point here. So if we take a look at our mechanical, it's going to put us at 2 inches, and so 2.254 is what we're getting right here. It's a little bit off from what I know it actually is, just because our mechanical caliper isn't always the easiest to read, and it kind of varies a little bit. Then we can kind of come down here. We've got our inner bearing, so we can measure for that as well. And what we're getting right now is just our inner diameter. So from there, we would need to go over to our hub and actually measure the bore hole inside of our hub. So since we already have our grease seal in place, I can show you. For the hub side of this, we're going to be switching over to the other smaller tongs that you see right here. And these face the opposite way, because now we're not trying to get that around it, we're trying to get it from the inside, so that way we can get our outer diameter here for our bearings and our grease seal. So you can see, same process, we are just pushing that up to that point right there. You could then lock this in by turning that screw on your mechanical one or on your digital one. Digital one's definitely going to be a lot easier to read here. So you would just take that measurement, you'd get your inner and outer, and then we can just look at which bearings and grease seals are going to be a match to fit that specific setup. This specific bearing, we're going to have a 1.25 inch inner diameter, so that's what's actually going to be sitting on our spindle. And then for the hub side of it, with our specific hub, it's going to be a 1.690 inch diameter for that outer diameter there, and that's what's going to mate up with our race and then that's already pressed into our hub, so that's going to be the fit there. If you are in search of a replacement, typically what you can do is just look at the back. Now, a lot of the time the part number is going to wear off on that, and then you're stuck with a caliper. You're going to have to actually measure your borehole inside of your hub and then also the spindle itself, which I'll show you in just a little bit because we're going to swap over. We'll get this wheel off and show you exactly how to get these installed and how to measure for them. I like to throw down a couple of shop towels because we're going to have some components falling out of here that we want to save, and there's going to be some grease that's left over in here, and if at any point water got into here, it's going to be real gross. So we want to make sure that we're keeping our floor nice and clean. And what we're going to want to grab next is a rubber mallet. We're going to be hitting our grease cap here, or not grease cap, sorry, our hub cap here with this mallet in kind of a 45-degree angle because we're trying to pop this out. So I'm going to tap it, I'll spin the hub, and we'll get it broke free away from her. Just like so. And then you can see just all the gross grease, and you see how it kind of turned pink and it's real clumpy. That tells me water's been inside of here. So at this point, I'm going to come in with more shop towels. We're going to wipe all this away so that we can reveal our castle nut. I'm going to take my needle nose pliers and I'm going to try and straighten out the cotter pin so that we can get it out. Now you might find you have a different setup depending on your axle brand. You might not have a cotter pin, you might have just kind of a cage that goes over. And I'm going to save that because that's not included with our bearing. So we'll wipe that off, get that cleaned up a little bit, and we'll set that down on our shop towel. And then the next thing is going to be our castle nut, which we should be able to get off by hand. If not, you can take usually a 1 1/8 inch socket or just some channel locks, get that off. But realistically, it should be just hand tight. I'm going to clean that up because this is something we'll also be reinstalling. Next, we'll have a spindle washer, and if it doesn't want to just pop out for you, what you can start doing is just playing with the hub. Just kind of throw it out a little bit, and that should pop it out, plus the outer bearing. There we go. And you can see all the old grease, and a lot of that dark stuff that you're seeing kind of mixed into it is essentially our brake dust. So as the shoes start to get worn and we get that brake dust kind of powdering on the inside here, it all gets stuck and attracted into that grease. And if we don't deal with that routinely, it can end up causing issues with the spindle. You can have wear on the spindle, and then at that point there's no salvaging it, you got to replace it. We'll wipe all that down, and then we can spray it with some brake clean. Help clean it up the rest of the way. And I'm also going to grab my grease gun, and we'll use this grease zerk fitting to push out the dirty grease that's still inside of our spindle. So hitting it with a little bit of brake clean. Now, in my case, the trailer brakes are going to be replaced as well, so I'm also going to pop those off. But at the same time, this is a good chance to actually take a look at your shoes, make sure that they're still functioning properly, they got enough life on them, you don't have any grease on them. The other side of this trailer had the grease seals fail, grease got splattered all over the brake shoes. So essentially at that point, those brake assemblies are no longer working because now we're losing our friction because we have that grease preventing the friction with our trailer hub, which is the other half of this. We want to look at our hub on the inside as well. This one's not as bad as what it was like over on the other side. There's not as much grease buildup as what we had over there, but it is still pretty dirty. So what I want to do is check it, and if we're having any divots where we can really put our fingernail into, or maybe there's real big ridges on our hub face here, that's a sign that we need to replace it. Because the brake magnet right here rides on this section of our hub, and if it's not making good contact, we no longer have good braking power. pop out our brake assembly here. We can swap over to some new ones. Assembly's held in place by 5 bolts. We're just going to pop those off with a 9/16 socket. And we are going to save those because the hardware is not included with our replacement. I'm just going to snip the wires right here. You can see we have our factory wiring spliced into it. These are the ones from the magnet. And then we can just simply pop our brake assembly off. And if you want to, this would be a good time to kind of clean up the brake mounting flange here with a wire brush if it's getting a little too crusty on you. I am tightening these down in a star pattern too, just to make sure that we're getting this backing plate on nice and even. And then over on our brake assembly, I'm going to strip back a little bit more. They didn't really give us too much to work with here. We'll grab our heat shrink butt connector. That way it stays nice and safe. We don't have to worry about water or anything else corroding out. Twist this up. We can slide it into our butt connector. And then we'll take our crimper and crimp down. All right, now we can make our connection to our factory wiring. And same thing here, we're just twisting up the wire, pushing it into our butt connector, and crimping it down. Now we'll use our heat gun to shrink down our butt connectors. We're going to pop out our grease seal. You can see right here the actual grease seal numbers are still there. So the GS2250DL, we could use that to go figure out the correct replacement. In our case, we've already got that, so at this point we're just going to pop it out. You're going to have to damage this to pop it out, so that's why we always say if you're repacking your bearings, you're going to be replacing that grease seal as well. And what I like to do is just take a big flathead screwdriver and I'm going to hammer in on one side, which it kind of looks like this side's popped up a little bit more compared to over here, so I think I'm going to start over here. And as you start to hammer in on one side, it will typically push the other side up out of the way, and if not, it'll give you a little bit of wiggle room, and then you can kind of get your screwdriver in there and pry up on it a little bit better. So we'll start by popping that. And then what I like to do is get it fully in there. I'll kind of put my hand over it and I'm going to hit the end of my screwdriver to help pop it out. And it may take a few times of doing that to get it to fully go. You may even have to kind of put your feet up on the hub too. Find that easier when you're working with something that's a little bit heavier duty. If you don't have a seal puller, if you do, it'll be a lot easier. So right there, we popped it out. It did get grease kind of everywhere. So be ready for that. Wear some clothes you do not care about, because usually doing anything involving grease is typically going to get all over you. Wipe all that old gross grease out of here. I'm also going to grab the old bearing. We'll toss that since we're replacing it today. And then just the process of just wiping this whole thing out. It's going to take a few shop towels. I would definitely throw some more brake clean in here and clean this up because there's a lot of brake dust buildup in here. And we got a little bit of grease from popping out that grease seal. Now that I have this all wiped out, you can see our inner race right here. And if you are having to replace that, then the easiest way to get this replaced is to actually freeze your races beforehand. You'll definitely have a challenge prying it out. You'll definitely have to use a punch, or if you have a puller, that makes it a little bit easier to grip down on the bottom here and kind of pull it all the way out. But freezing it will make it smaller, so that way when you're going in with a new one, I would just typically just pop them into your freezer the night before, take them out right when you're going to do it. You can drop it right in. It should be just slightly smaller, just because as it freezes, it'll kind of compress a little bit. And then you can drop it in. You may have to tap it a little bit with a punch to get it fully seated. And then as it starts to warm up, it'll expand enough to fully seat into place. So that way, just makes it a little bit easier instead of a big challenge of punching it down. But with all that said, now what we can do is pack our bearings. So we'll pick up our inner and outer bearing. So to pack our bearings, we're going to need a tub of grease. We've got our high temp grease because this isn't a marine application. So what we'll want to do is grab a good glob of that, and we'll slap it into the palm of one of our hands. And then we're going to take our bearing, and I'm going to start with our inner bearing because we're going to drop that into our hub first. And we want the open side of it. You can see how this side's a lot more open than the tapered side here. So we're going to push our grease through, and you'll start to see it come up between the rollers on this side. And what we'll do is just kind of scrape it. And if you can just try to get it on the edge. That way you're not having a bunch of it kind of pile up on the inside here. And we'll keep going. You can see it's starting to press out, so then I'll just turn it, keep going. And then once we run out of grease, that's why I'll kick back all the rest of that that's extra sitting on there. I'll also typically try to scrape it all from the other parts of my hand to get it into one big pile again. There are grease like packing tools that you can get to. Essentially, it's just like a little press that you would set the bearing into and then press down on, kind of wiggle it around, and it'll press all of that grease in there for you. If you're someone that's not really going to be doing this too often, packing it by hand is good enough. I mean, as long as you get a pair of gloves, it's not really too big of a mess. But if you're someone who's going to be packing a ton of bearings, I'd definitely recommend picking up one. All right, so we've got it all the way around. Now what I'm going to do with this excess grease is just coat the whole outside of our bearing really well. And with this all nice and greased up. And now we'll drop this in. I like to grab it from the center so I can hopefully avoid getting grease all over the inside of our hub. There we go. And now I'm going to switch over to my inner bearing. We'll get that packed so that way we're not using multiple sets of gloves. And then from there, we can throw in our grease seal and get that packed into place too. Now for my grease seal, I like to just grab just a tiny little bit of grease. We're going to do a really fine film of that around our grease seal to help drive it in a little bit easier. Alright, now we got that good. Now make sure that when you're driving this in, you're putting it in the correct way. You can see there's an opening here. We want that facing down. It's closed off here. We want that facing out towards our brake assembly. Make sure that we keep all the grease inside. You can set this in place, and what you want to essentially have is a seal pusher, so that way you can actually hammer that in nice and flush with the hub here. If you don't have that, what a lot of people like to do is just take a 2x4 that's just wide enough to cover that, but obviously small enough to fit inside the hub, and you can hammer that down. Now, I found sometimes when I do that, the wood is soft enough that as you hammer it in, sometimes it'll over press the seal into place, and then now the seal isn't even. And sometimes that leads to a leak. So one thing I found that typically is always going to work is a large enough hole saw, because it's all metal, has no problem stopping right on the hub here, and it won't push it further than that. So I've got that in place. I've got a handle for our seal pusher, which is missing the attachments. So all we'll do, simple as that. Then all we want to do is just kind of feel around, make sure it's nice and flush, which it is. Using the hole saw, definitely the easiest way I have found so far. And at this point now, we're going to grease up our spindle, so just grab yourself another good glob. All right, we're going to rub that all over our spindle aside from this back area right here. This is your grease seal is going to sit there, and we don't want that greased up. We don't want anything getting back behind it. So all of this, fair game right here. And we'll even add a little bit more in with the grease zerk fitting once we have our assembly in place. All right, so you can grab your hub. Make sure you got it going on nice and straight. We don't want to scratch our spindle. Push that all the way back. While that's back, we're now going to grab our outer bearing. We'll slot that in with the tapered side going towards the inside of our assembly. Now we can pop on our spindle washer, and that's just going to help provide even pressure up against our bearing. and then our castle nut. Now, I'm pretty sure I said earlier 1 1/8. Obviously, the sizes are going to change depending on capacity. With our specific one today, it's 1 1/2 for the socket, and we're going to torque this down to spec, and then we'll back it off and use the cotter pin and castle nut. All right. So what we're looking for here is we don't want any play with our hub. So I shouldn't be able to kind of wobble it side to side at all, which is pretty good. And I can spin, which also spinning this a little bit as we add in grease will help kind of transfer that around, really fill in that cavity. But now at this point, I'm going to back it off just a bit, and then we'll go finger tight. Now it's finger tight. May have to move it just a little bit while we figure out the cotter pin. Might have to come up a little bit more. Right there. Got our cotter pin through. Now, just double check it one more time. See if you got any side to side play. And then if you're all good, you can take one side of your cotter pin. So it's going to be 2 tines here that are sandwiched together. We're going to spread one up, one down, and that's just going to help prevent it from being able to come out of here, so that way we know for sure we won't be having our assembly come apart. So now I'm going to come with my grease gun. We'll give it a couple squirts. This is going to be coming out right at the back where our grease seal is. We don't want to go too crazy with it though, because we could end up blowing out the grease seal. So make sure you're spinning this, getting that grease flowing, and you can keep adding. Don't go too much. You're not putting a whole tube in here. We really just are wanting to fill in the cavity a bit. And once you fully see it fill, you'll kind of see the same thing that you saw on the ends of the bearing, where it has like kind of circles coming the whole way around here of lubrication. Now, I'm not going to overdo it here with that, so we might not see that today, just because we already got enough grease on here to be good. We'll spin that one more time. My dust cap in here, and I've got a drive tool so that I can hammer it in to our hub assembly, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. That gives us nice even pressure, and our dust cap is now fully seated in there, and that's going to do it for assembling our hub here. Now all we have left to do is just throw on our wheel, put on our lug nuts, and torque them down, and then we're good to go. That's going to do it for our look at the Timken Replacement 15123 trailer hub bearing. My name's Kevin, and if you still have some questions about what's going to be the right replacement bearing or how to install one, please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or a phone call to our customer service department. We'd be happy to help out on your journey.